Welcome back to Selling on Giants, the e-commerce marketplace show. Today's going to be a little different. Instead of a traditional interview, we're going to do a live working session around something that's starting to impact every brand on Amazon right now. Most listings today are still built around keywords. The problem is Amazon isn't ranking products the same way it used to. There's a shift happening towards AI-driven discovery, and a lot of brands are feeling that without fully understanding. So I've got Jon Tilley of ZonGuru here with me, and we're going to walk through how he's thinking about listings in this new environment, what's actually changing underneath the hood, and what brands should be doing differently if they want to stay competitive. The goal here is simple: less theory, more practical. If you're running a brand, you should walk away with a clearer way to think about your listings going forward. Let's jump in. Hey, Jon, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you be here. Thank you for taking the time. I know you did a little pre-work for this, and we're going to be discussing your new software rollout, which is the Helix, and how it's impacting search. But more importantly, what's been changing in the landscape of Amazon listings and Amazon search. We hear tons of buzzwords around Rufus, Cosmos, even some people claiming A10, which I'm not even sure is really a thing, but I'd like to get to the root of it today. So Jon, real quick, do you mind doing a super short introduction? And then I have some questions for you and we'll jump into a working session.
Yeah, well, always good to jump on with you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm Jon. I'm over in Los Angeles, and I'm the CEO and founder of ZonGuru. We have a bunch of different tools you can use to really optimize and manage your Amazon business. But our core focus has always been around Amazon's algorithm and reverse engineering. How you can truly create content that maximizes your exposure and reach on Amazon. And certainly it has had a seismic shift of late happen. And so we're truly engineered to help brands meet Amazon's AI moment that is currently happening with conversational search.
I love how you put it too, the moment, because it seems like it's just like a switch flipped and then it's what everybody's talking about. Before we jump into a working session and you kind of go over what you guys do and how we look at this, can you tell me what's changing about, like, what about the traditional ways is not working anymore in terms of listing structure?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important concept to get across is, like, at a high level, traditionally the way that Amazon was used as a platform was for intense searches and purchases, right? You knew what you wanted, you came on, you typed in a keyword, and you bought your product, right? And Amazon's very good at that, and it was optimizing content on your listing for keyword searches, right? And that game has fundamentally changed because the advent of platforms like and LLMs like ChatGPT, right, where they've raised their hand and they've said, hey, we've created this amazing conversational search agent where I can have a conversation with an agent and get answers to my research questions very quickly. And we all use ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, whatever that is, and it's been fundamentally integrated into our day-to-day lives, right? And OpenAI, it's no secret, and ChatGPT, that they raised their hand and said, hey, well, if people are searching for products, why don't we include links to buying products on our platform and start to own that area of research and e-commerce purchasing, right? And so Amazon has, through as its hands been forced to a degree, saying, hey, there's a new way of e-commerce search that's happening in conversational search, and we can either decide to give up that that market share to other platforms, or we can decide to own that, right? And they made the decision to own it, and so they launched Rufus, which is a conversational search platform that you can use and help find products, right? And you can now use it in a keyword intent by way of finding products, but you can also use it in a conversational way where you're researching and trying to find something that matches your shopping criteria, right? And so Amazon has decided to own that area. They've created Rufus, and the quality level of that has improved massively, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's the one reason, is they need to own their market share, and they're all in on that. But the other side of it is there's over 270 million customers using Rufus today. They projected $12 billion in sales, right? And the key stat there is like customers that use Rufus, their propensity to convert is 60% higher than the traditional keyword search method, right? So people are having a conversation with Rufus, they're getting the answers to their questions that they have around buying a certain product. They're trusting the recommendations from Rufus, and then they're converting at a higher percentage, and actually at a higher cart value as well, because there's other recommendations that are coming in. So it's cool for Amazon. They're all in on this. Now it's the question of whether brands are in on this as well, and they can capitalize on this new discoverability layer that is now available on Amazon. So this is how I shop today. Is I come on and I will, I don't even use typical keyword search anymore. I'll use Rufus because I might have specific questions that I want answered. Hey, I'm looking for a baby car seat that has a specific type of strap that I know is important for me, that fits this kind of car, or a narrow kid, or whatever it is, whatever my criteria are. I don't even have to look at PDPs anymore and try and sift through the PDPs and try and find that information. I can just ask Rufus, and it's going to come back with answers and recommendations, and then I can click through and look, right? So it's a much more efficient, high quality level search experience, and it's being adopted at a rapid pace. Now the trick is, what is driving that, right? And what is driving that is a new algorithm called Cosmo. So Amazon had to move away from its archaic A9 algorithm that was basically looking for keywords in a listing, where it's mathematically where it's placed and what kind of conversion you're getting off of that, to use that as ranking factors, as part of the ranking factors, right? There's reviews and everything else that go in, performance indicators. But in order to ensure that number one, the Rufus-driven conversational search experience was at a level and a quality level of other LLMs, Amazon had to have a new algorithm put in place, which is Cosmo. Now, Cosmo is an intelligent algorithm that will use kind of indicators or signals from your content, from other factors, reviews, performance factors, all that stuff, to then decide, hey, how should we map you to all the different keywords out there, right? There's a universe of keywords, right? And instead of like, it's all semantically use the content in your listing to map you to all the keywords, because Amazon's going to make more money if it matches you to the right keywords, right? So that's the one side. And then the other side is the Rufus Q&A side, which is, what are the types of questions and the types of, use cases that will allow Rufus to connect all the dots to recommend you, to different types of questions that are being asked in Rufus, or directives, right? So if there's prompts or questions happening in Rufus, how is it intelligent enough to know, hey, this is what we need to recommend for that? And the quality level needs to be at a high level, and that's why Cosmo drives us. And Cosmo is intelligent enough to go, hey, I need to structurally look at your content and then connect all the dots, right? And if I have a product knowledge graph that will tell me, hey, what is it for? When should it be used? What are the different use cases? Blah blah blah. If it's getting answers to all of that from your content, it knows how to recommend you, right? And that's what we call structured listing engineering, which is making sure that it's not just content for converting customers. Yeah. It's actually a signaling graph that will tell Cosmo, hey, this is what my product should be mapped to for all these different questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You covered a lot there too. And just to kind of rehash, the adoption of Rufus and AI technologies for search is exponentially increasing. I read an article that millennial and Gen Z is adopting it at a pretty fast rate. And what was it, 219 million searches on Rufus?
270 million customers, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's true, because if I'm searching for something very specific to my use case, I'm going to Rufus and I'm telling them, here's the parameters, here's what I'm looking for. And it's making those recommendations. And kind of what we're going to dive in today, what a lot of sellers are missing that's behind the curve, is they don't understand that Cosmos is taking like contextual signals of use cases and everything else, and they're applying it to these random searches that are happening. And it's only a matter of time before advertising is deeply integrated in this and everything else, which is pretty exciting. But on that note, I know that you looked at actually one of our brands. We recently took over extra wide socks and you did kind of a review, I'd love to kind of do a working session. So any of our listeners who are tuning in and are saying, boy, that's a lot of data science for me. I'm just trying to sell dog food. I would love to kind of dive in on like how this is applicable to current listings and anybody who's considering how they're going to optimize for the future, what that might look like. Jon, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, I'm ready to jump in. I think I want to make one more comment, which is really cool for brands, right? And the key thing to understand is the archaic A9 algorithm was like looking for like the more keywords you stuffed into that listing and the more ingredient focused you made that listing and the more nonsensical you made your bullets and your titles, right? We all went through this era of keyword stuffing. The better the algorithm got signals for and the more you rank for, right? But ultimately you had like this really crappy listing that didn't make as much sense, but it was really geared towards trying to signal the keywords, right? Those days are gone. And in fact, if you do that, you get dinged. But the reverse of that is not true, which is like now we can create listings that actually can breathe and can talk about the beautifulness of your product and why it's uniquely positioned to be a better product for the customers and connect with them emotionally and talk about the brand, right? So all the things that we should be doing on your Amazon listing, this heartbeat of your Amazon business. Now you have the opportunity to talk about your brand in the best way and connect with customers and convert them, right? Sell them on your product in a great way. So it's a really cool place actually for brands to be. And you can now transition your listings into something that aligns with your brand, which is part of our process. So I just wanted to mention that because like people are like, oh no, there's this whole technical thing. Well, there's like there's a bright side to it as well, which is like, okay, now we can actually be who we want to be on Amazon, which is great, right? So
more branding too. Get rid of those generics, and also too, like you don't want to index for everything under the sun. You want to index for what you actually sell for and the problems you solve. So this is going to make it easier, and I can't wait to dive in to see some of the technology you built out to support that.
Yeah, 100%. Is it better for me to leave this here or move it to
if you can click that off, that's good. Hide it.
Okay, I'll put it here so I can see you anyway. Cool. So you're going to come onto Amazon, right? There's obviously different ways for you to search, right? Extra wide socks, right? You type that in. And you're going to start to see your typical organic results. Now, obviously, I've clicked on this before, so it's smart enough to start to surface things that I've behaviorally clicked on. So that's one way you can find products. The other way is obviously with Rufus, right? So that everyone understands, you can go into Rufus and you can ask whatever questions you want. It's gonna give you some of these initial prompts. Now, these are pretty generic, but like it's like, hey, how can I help you? What socks are best for swollen feet? Men's versus etc. Right? So I can ask any questions I want here, and it's going to come back with recommendations. So, for example, I can go recommendations for socks that help with wide feet, and heavy set bodies. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just making it up, but I've kind of shorthanded this, but you can obviously have a decent conversation. But like if I'm looking for extra wide socks, what is driving my search criteria and shopping criteria? Is it, hey, I'm heavy set and I need something that's more supportive, or do I want things that are mid calf or that really also support I don't know if these socks do that, but like support circulation or whatever it is, right? So hey, I understand these. I can it's coming back with some recommendations, right? At the moment, right? Interestingly, it's not actually even. It comes down with extra wide down the bottom, right? Now, I can get into this, and we don't want to get sidetracked too much, but I can start to have a conversation here and say, hey, great. Like, what are some other things that I should be looking at when I'm looking for socks, right? And it'll come back and give me some further questions or things I need to look at. I can ask for recommendations, right? And it'll be interesting to see, like, hey, is it going to recommend extra wide socks or a different brand, right? And I've seen this time and time again where brands that are well known and might come up organically in a keyword search when I'm actually getting down to the point of saying, hey, Rufus, recommend to me what's the best one for a premium level extra wide sock. It might not come back and actually recommend your specific brand. It will recommend a different product, right? Because it might not be getting the exact signals. And so it's an interesting area to play with, Rufus, because there's the general recommendations, but if you think about people who are actively using Rufus, they might have some longer tail search criteria, right? They might, or shopping criteria, right? So like, I really want a black, organic cotton, etc. Like, so some of those longer tail use cases, Rufus is going to come back and recommend. So you've got to make sure that, for the universe that's out there, it's almost like a longer tail keyword. You have to have those recommendations in place as well, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we do with Rufus, right? So I'm going to show you how we do this, right? And so we can look at and feel free to ask questions as we go, Will. But I'm looking at this
just
brand. Right?
Chime in. It sounds like you really need to understand your customer, who you serve, and your product, right? Because if you're going to be updating this, to my point earlier, you don't want to be everything to everyone, but people with diabetes, heavier set people with just big feet. Obviously, you want to make sure that you understand how they shop and the questions they might ask, which is how you're going to index better, right?
Yeah. And so it's an important point, and maybe just one last piece of theory on this is Cosmo is looking for two kind of categories for signaling, right? One is something that Amazon gave us, which is it's a product knowledge graph. It's actually like a technical graphical mapping that you will have within your listing, which in a simple way of explaining it's a whole bunch of questions that Cosmo needs answers to. What is the product for? Who's it for? What are the different use cases? Is it seasonal? So all of those typical questions, it's intelligent enough to say, hey, give me the answers to this, because then I'll know how to serve you, right? What are the best keywords that you should be recommended for? So Cosmo needs that mapping. And then the other side is the customer Rufus the style questions that it needs to understand. Like, what are the different types of questions that your product should be recommended for? And so we do a lot of engineering also on the question side on two factors, which is like, well, there's a number of different factors, but one is like, what are the most common questions that customers will be asking when they're researching this type of product? So research is important, right? Because you want to surface for the common research questions. But the other side is, what are the most common questions that people will have around the questions for shopping criteria to make conversions, right? And it's really important to understand the difference between the two. There's research questions, and then there's conversion questions. Like, if I get the answers on these ones, I know I'm going to get a higher conversion, right? So we reverse engineer and we look across the spectrum of like, what are the most important questions, and then make sure we answer that on two factors. And we score listings based on that. So I'm going to show you how we score that, and then obviously how we optimize in a second. But high level, just looking at this listing.
Pretty interesting though, if I could comment on that. So like, what you're taking almost a funnel approach, where it's like discovery happens here, intents here, and then these are kind of the lines of questions around it, which is a really interesting way to kind of discover how customers might initially discover and find in market versus somebody who is that customer and they're a little more dialed into exactly what they're looking for.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, obviously this listing needs help, right? I mean, it does pretty well right now, but you guys are brought in to help this listing. I mean, one of the first things I'd say is like, for Cosmo and obviously conversion, images are critical. Not only what the images are, but what are the copy overlays that go on this, right? And the narrative that you're telling to help, obviously, mainly with conversion with humans, but on the other side, AI also reads your images, right? So, this certainly needs help with like, what is the actual overlay and the content that goes into that, right? And we help on that front. And then obviously on the title, and then the bullets, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff here that is being used to signal the strength of the listing, right? So it has EBC content, fine, but it's going to need some help. So let's look at what this listing looks like. And so
just to chime in, so that's a really interesting point. So Rufus/Cosmos, they're actually, so like those images that had no words, they were just lifestyle shots. It pays to put some text, the text overlay over that, because it's going to get indexed one way or another. That's true, John?
That's true. Yeah. So, you can drop any image into, it's no secret that Rufus is driven by, LLMs, right? They have Amazon Nevo, but they use Anthropic as well. So it's similar to other LLMs, right? If you take, you can't see the black box of what, Cosmo is, but if you take, any image and drop it into ChatGPT and say, hey, what does this image tell you? It's going to come back and tell you a story, right? And that's due to the content of the image, but the metadata behind it, right? And it's the same way with, so the alt tags and everything else that you're adding in Amazon matter as well, right? And that space will get progressively better. Amazon needs to take a couple steps there, but yeah, it does read your images. So this is Helix, right? You can jump in. We'll give you a link. You can sign up and, it'll explain to you exactly how to go about transforming a listing. So there's really 3 steps, right? There's create your brand, right? Add your products, transform your listing. Now, I want to talk about this for a second because we've taken the approach of saying, hey, if you're going to, if there's a need right now to transform your listing to make sure that you are now discoverable across keyword search and conversational search, right? And maximizing your discoverability. If we're going to redo the content because it needs to be done, we might as well take the time right now to improve those other areas that I talked about, which is like, let's start with your brand. Like, what's your brand strategy? What's your brand, voice? What's your brand style, right? Who are you as a brand? What's your mission? What's your, what's your values of what you bring to the space, right? And so we spent some time making sure that we have in this agentic system, we have agents that will go and research online, discover your brand, reflect back to you what the brand is, and do all that research, and then give you an opportunity to input into that, right? Because it's trying to learn exactly, if I'm going to write your content, it needs to come from, what is your brand about, right? So we do a lot of learning on that side, and then we do a lot of learning on the product side. So when you do the product side, we do deep research on your Amazon niche, but like at the end of the day, it's a positioning exercise, right? And so as marketers, as brand owners, or as agencies, we understand the idea of positioning, which is like, okay, on Amazon, we need to position your unique selling proposition around what do customers want. So what are they saying in reviews? What do customers truly want in extra wide socks? Not what we think. What do they want? Yeah. What are your competitors all talking about? And what's our strengths as a product and as a brand, and how can we uniquely position that, right? So that's the idea of the product side, which is like, how do we uniquely position your brand, but also talk about all the product attributes and the disclaimers and the credentials or whatever it is around this product. How do we talk about that in the right way that matters to customers, right? So we do a deep exercise on that, and then we finally transform the listings for obviously content that sells the customer, right? On the images and the content side, but is also mapped for the AI readability. So that's like, in a nutshell, the process that you go through here. And we make sure that we allow you to go along with that process and input into that process, because, our agents are going to take the best shot at this, but you guys are the subject matter experts, brand owners or agencies. So get the opportunity for you to give that input along the way, right?
Yeah. And John, what I'm hearing I love is like how important branding is now for the brands that are competing on Amazon or in marketplaces in general. And even from like the super basic level, it's messaging and positioning. And you need to understand the brand if you're going to get the correct messaging. And then obviously the positioning and the unique selling proposition can all fold into that. So I really think it's smart how you guys have designed the system to put the brand first, dive deeper into products, and then actually optimize these listings. So I'm excited to see what you guys came up with extra wide sock.
Yeah. Maybe not the most flamboyant brand out there, but it's a brand. So I've done this step, right? Because for sake of time, just jumping into it, but this whole process can take minutes, right? So you've got to go in and go through the process. But at the end of the day, as it creates this content, right, you can kind of, you'll get a kind of a guide that an agent on the right hand side that might come back with specific answers that it's confident on, but where it's not confident, it might stop and say, hey, can you verify this information? So for the sake of time, I just clicked through and verified everything. But at the end of the day, right, you have your brand story, right, where, founded in the mid 1990s by Karen and Bruce after recognizing a significant gap in the markets. It talks about the brand origin. This is all pulling from content, third-party content across the web, right? Vision statement: to deliver unparalleled comfort and joy. Is that correct? Is this the vision statement that they have? Audience and position: target audience, right? Who is it? People with wider feet, ankles, and calves who struggle to find socks that fit, right? Without constriction, right? That kind of stuff. Unique value proposition: family-owned, American-made brand. Yeah. American is obviously important here, right?
Very proud of that.
Built around width and medical fit. 3 specialized sub-brands, right? So it comes back with all of this and says, this is what our uniqueness is. Like, how do we position ourselves in the market? Is it niche medical, comfort specialist, American-made, mid-market, inclusive fits? Add market positions. You can add more, right? Or delete. Yeah. Voice and messaging: friendly, playful, conversational with a genuine, empathetic core. Uses rhetorical questions and humor to connect. Feeling trapped by tight socks? Had to cut the tops just to fit, right? So this is obviously his brand, right? Messaging preference: lead with the customer's pain point, right? Topics to avoid: stating in specific founded year, all materials USA source, right? So it kind of comes back with things that you might want to avoid. And then proof, like submission and values, achievements and social proof. It had questions around this, like, hey, we found 5,265 Amazon reviews with a 5-star rating. Is that true, right? So whatever it is, right, it came back, and you can delete these, or you can accept them. For the purpose of this, I don't know the brand, I just accepted it, right? So
yeah. It's just to chime in for our listeners, I gave Jon no information. We met the week before just to kind of prep for this this workshop together, and he asked, "Do you have a brand we can run this on? It would be fun." And I just said, extra wide socks, they're new to us. And I just shared, I didn't even share the website link. I was just like, here's the top seller. And today we're seeing what the software actually came up with. So as I'm listening in, and somebody who's working with Karen and Bruce, a lot of this lines up. I mean, a lot of it. So it's really impressive that, Jon, your software was able to kind of scour the internet, pull a lot of these in, but also get to the intricacies of the value proposition, the social proof, messaging. So from the outsider looking in, this is pretty impressive. How long did it take to generate this page? Is this like 3 days or?
No, 2 minutes. Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
That is impressive. Wow.
It'll do it in under 2 minutes. And you can also choose to, like, hey, go ahead and pull from my website, or you enter a URL and it starts there. But you can also skip that. If you had like a brand strategy document and you wanted to upload it and teach it that way, you can do it as well, right? But to your point, like, it's pretty cool to see this reflection back, and there'll be some things that maybe brand owners or agencies haven't thought about yet. So it's a good reflection from the forest, from the trees, right? Like, oh, what is it? We've had brands come back to us and say, yo, this is, my website is not doing a good job of telling us what our brand is about, right? So I'm going to go and fix that first, right? So it's kind of interesting, and you can export, right? So there's value in this, obviously, for Amazon, but you can literally have this export of this brand strategy document that you can use on other platforms, right? So once you've done that, like, now we've ultimately kind of factored in like some kind of knowledge around the brand, right? And as much information as you add to that, the more intelligent the agent is, right? And then we would go into the product side. So I did one of the products because I did a transformation, but I want to show you kind of what it looks like, right? So I just took the extra wide comfort socks here, right? Importantly, it comes back with a readiness score, right? So if I click on this is showing you on the current listing, how well is this brand actually optimized for Cosmo and Rufus, right? On the mapping side, which I talked about, right? This left side, and then on the Rufus Q&A side. It's got a score of 61 out of 100, which, to be honest, is not actually that bad, right? Typically, anything over 70, 75% is starting to get into a decent range, right? But there is some, mapping that's already in place, but there's significant gaps. Like, it's showing you here, like, used for, like, how do you use it compared to alternatives? Develop skill, used in, used on, used with. This is the one that's usually missing, the used with complementary, which is like, that's a co-buy behavior, right? Saying like, hey, if I'm buying thrombosis leggings for thrombosis, if I'm a customer buying that, I might also want to buy extra wide grade socks, right? And so if you're not signaling to Cosmo the co-buy coefficients and how those products can go for. It's not going to recommend you in these other situations. And you want to be recommended when people might not be thinking about extra wide socks. I'm looking for these type of pants. Hey, Rufus will come back and say, hey, now that you find the pants, what about socks? You know? And so if you can get recommended like that, you're just going to increase your revenue and selling, right? So it's saying there's areas to improve here. And then on the Rufus Q&A, there's things missing. What shoe size is for small men? What is the actual foot width measurement? Will they shrink after washing? Are they cushioned for athletic use? Do they have arch support? You know, these are all common questions people have that that's an interesting one. Like if I'm buying these socks, like, you know, is it going to support my arch, right? Do these socks have that built in or not? Like, and if it doesn't, is that part of my shopping criteria and I'm going to buy another sock, right? So it's kind of interesting to see some of this is just a high level and it's not all the questions. It's just giving you a snapshot. But it's giving you
I do like the Cosmo and the Q&A too. Something we always do on our side, which is a little more manual, scrape reviews, look at competitor Q&As. It's interesting to get the Rufus perspective, and I'm sure it's based on the algorithm and how you guys are connected to the back end. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So we're using primary data to get at that as well. So it's going to come back and say, hey, what's your main niche, which is basically your main buy keyword, right? So extra wide socks for men, you can change it, of course, if you want. You know, you can change it. It's got your top competitors. You know, I just selected these, but you can change them. So like, you know, if we all know on Amazon, if we can help seed this with the most relevant competitors, it's going to do a better job of understanding your niche. And then, you know, now we get into key features and benefits. So this is the important stuff, right? That is really critical to uniquely positioning your brand, but it's a summary of like what this is and what matters to customers. So extra wide fit up to, you know, 6E width, whatever that means, right? Designed specifically for wide feet, fits overcast and Uno boots, superior stretch, allows the socks to go on easily, soft ring spun cotton construction. I clicked through some of these, but you know, these might be made in the USA, unisex, medium cushioning, medium weight, right? So there's a bunch of key features and benefits. Now there's differentiators, right? And it knows some of these, right? But actually it's saying here, hey, can you confirm these are the widest quarter socks available on the market?
Oh, interesting.
And I can say, sure, you know, I can confirm that, or I can request a change, right? So I can confirm. Then it's going to come back and say, hey, you know, your listing mentions 4 sizes available. What are the exact size names and corresponding shoe ranges? And actually, it's going to give you its best answer. And if you hit tab, it'll actually put that in, right? So what's cool about that is like it'll have its best answer, but it's not quite sure. So you can select the answer or not, right? So we'll just do continue for now, right? So this is the process of how you go through and you verify, you know, questions, sizes, and then it gets into certifications, right? You know, so it's going to ask you like, hey, are these socks OEKO tech standard 100 certified? Yes, no, you know, whatever these are, but these are important certifications for the things. And sometimes it's going to lean a lot more on like some of the certifications that could be in place.
Yeah.
And it's important to, you know, as a subject matter expert, you might be like, hey, like, don't worry about this. So we'll just remove it,
I
right?
could see, not sure about socks, but I could see supplement brands being GMP manufactured, for example. That would be something that you probably want to put on your listings. So it's pretty interesting. It's looking at that aspect, and I see compliance too. So that's
so compliance disclaimers, like, you know, those are important. And then do not mentions, which we all know is so critical, right? Like, especially like this, if you're going to say antibacterial socks, you might get nailed, right? So, you know, and if I start saying, hey, it's going to be medical grade, right? You might get flagged on Amazon and your listing might not go live, right? So it's going to come back with like, hey, some of the do not mentions, and you can click yes, verify, or remove, or add your own ones, right? So if you know specific things will help that shouldn't be mentioned, put it here, because then the system will know and then obviously avoid that in the content writing, right? Makes sense?
Then it does its own first pass, John. So like we have our own prohibited keyword list. I'm taking it's pretty much baked in, so it'll flag it if it's potential, and we'll just verify it or add to it. Very cool.
So it's looking at the niche, and it understands like you know, at first pass what are the main things that you shouldn't mention, but you can add to that as well.
Beautiful.
And then you go
97. That's a huge improvement.
Yeah. So, you know, this is a transformation I did now. I want to, want to show you. Maybe we can just take a second on this one. Let's see if I can just click through this real quick. Hold on.
Sure.
We're just going to accept these, right? Let me just do this.
Let's do it. It's an example anyway.
Yeah. Given you made this positioning, okay. So now, what's cool about that, which I don't know if you saw that, but like based on the answer I gave before, it rethinks and it might say, oh, because now you verified it as this, let me ask you some other questions, right? So it's kind of a, it's a brain, right? It's thinking, and based on your answer, it might have some other things that it wants to verify, right? So now once you're done with this, let's see if we're done. It might have one more. Let's see. Let's say we do not mention diabetic, whatever. Okay. So now you can run a transformation. So I'll run it on this white one. But what's cool when you run the transformation, this might take like 5 to 10 minutes to really do this, right? Because this brain, you can start to see it's starting to think, right? And it's thinking about your brand. It's thinking about the niche, the answers we're giving around the product attributes, and now it's strategically writing your content to make sure that you're positioned uniquely, to make sure you connect with customers. And what's cool, you can do this for the first time, is you can actually follow along and just kind of see how it's thinking, right? So, I noticed the listing is doing exactly what it should for a medical-focused product. It nails target audience, problem solving, etc. So it's saying, hey, we noticed that, right? But now it's saying, hey, this is interesting. The weakest dimensions are skills development, time, season, usage, and location, none of which are actually relevant to how someone with lymphedema or a class buys socks. The listing isn't failing to communicate those things. Those dimensions just don't matter for this product category and audience. So, so you can see it's in the research phase right now, but it's finding these like points, right? And it's kind of highlighting them. Like I'm seeing a potential mismatch between the brand, what the brand wants to emphasize, American made, etc., and what the listing is optimizing for. The UVP, or USP leans heavily into the only family-owned American-made story, but that narrative isn't showing up strongly in the current listing copy. It's mentioned once in the bullet, not woven into the positioning. So I want to change that, right? So it's finding all these things, and then it's going to start doing the strategy and crafting, etc. So it's really cool as like the agency or the brand to follow along first and say, hey, like what are the gaps and like how should we strategically change this content, right? So that's what it does as it goes through and does this process. And then obviously you get to the transformation, which is this, right? Now we're solving for two things here. One is we're solving the copy side and then the image side, and there's a different approach to each, right? So I want to show you what this looks like. So at a high level, right? Great, you scored well, you mapped right on this side. It's not always, it's never going to be 100%, right? But as long as we're answering the most important stuff in the best way possible, it's going to connect you and link on that. And then on the Rufus Q&A, it's going to so now we've answered 12 of the 14 main categories. Most importantly, like the most important research and questions are being answered in the content, right? And then we have the solution, right? So you can click on this to see the copy solution.
Wow.
And it's given to you in a report showing you before and after, like what was the before content, what is the actual optimized content. So you can kind of compare and contrast. And then the reasons why, like, so, hey, this is why it's now done in the best way possible. And I'll show you kind of what that looks through. So it helps to build confidence in your strategy and what you're actually putting forward to meet those two goals, which is maximizing human conversion and AR readability, right? So it'll summarize up top, like, okay, so what is the overview? What's the key achievements? What's the primary focus, right? So, for example, we executed a fundamental strategic shift from feature-sparse, clinically neutral product mechanics to an empathy-first, condition-specific value proposition that converts every product attributes. Non-binding band, 91% cotton blend, 5-inch width accommodation, true to size guidance, and a tangible relief outcome for the medically underserved customer the mainstream sock industry has historically ignored.
Wow.
Cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so it's done. It's like, okay, so how has it done that, right? Current title, optimized title. Current bullets, right? Optimized bullets. Non-binding extra wide design. If tight elastic leaves painful marks or pulling socks on has become a daily struggle, these were made for you. So if that's identified as one of the most key things that the customers really want, and you reading that first up, right? You know that, oh, this might be a thing for me. You'll continue to read, and when you are reading content at this level, it's saying, what needs to be done. But importantly, is also mapping you to be recommended for these things, right?
Yeah. What I like too is the natural language. And if anybody's ever done copywriting, it has romance. So if I look at the current bullets, they leave a lot to be desired. And in that first one you just read, non-binding, extra wide, if tight, elastic, like it does a really good job of describing the challenge in a very human conversational way. So it's very impressive that this is what it was able to generate.
Yeah, and aligned with the brand tonality, right? So yeah. So again, description, right? So you have a description, you have your back-end search terms, which is important, and then you have, and then we get into so copy, title, descriptions, back-end search terms, and then we get into a lot of the reasons why, right? And so it helps to explain, like, hey, how we evolved the content. So before it was like goes on easy and stays on. Now it's like the non-binding top band stays up. So it's linking the benefits. It's, it's added some additional benefits, right? It's value explained, right? So it kind of goes through like, how it's aligned the voice, right? So it's explained to you like all the things that it's done in the listing. It's gone through all the mapping. So all that, this is that Cosmo mapping, the technical mapping, used in what situation, target audience, is showing you it's mapped all of that, right? And I'll explain to you
how it has the why as part of it too. So you can at least understand the rationale behind the changes.
Yeah. Now, keywords is obviously important. So you can click on this to see all the keywords that you're semantically mapped for, right? So yes, there's exact match. There should be something exact match. Interestingly, I don't. Oh yeah. So it's exact match. Interestingly, I don't know why. Typically, you should have at least exact match on some of these, right? So it's showing broad match here. Here's an exact match is actually interestingly in the back-end search terms, right? So, it'll show you all the keywords that you are broad and exact match through, right? Across the whole set, right? And this is from primary data, from brand analytics data that's saying like, hey, what is the most important keywords that we should be exact and broad match for to make sure that we map semantically to all the keywords that are out there. And there's a significant amount, right? So you're across all of these keywords without overstuffing your listing with a bunch of stuff, right? So pretty cool, right? And then we answer all the Rufus Q&A questions, and then we get into, things that you also want to look at, like what is my ideal customer profile, my USP, but importantly, like what do we understand as your ideal customer profile? And then how do we cover this where we connect the unique selling proposition with what customers want, right? And so there's a whole bunch of explanation there. And then the compliance side, like, hey, some of the compliance things that we need to make sure that we addressed, right? So a lot to read there. I know we don't want to get too much into that, but you have all of that you can review, and then you can go to the launch center to see, hey, how will my content look, right? And then importantly, you can do any quick fixes. So like, there's always going to be like, what, like we actually want to say, extra wide socks, right? We actually wanted to exact match on extra wide socks. So we can change that, right? Or, hey, you know what, like this bullet here, I can delete things, or I can even go, hey, you know what, like I actually want to lead with, this compliance, right? So can you put that first, right? I can put exactly what I want, or can you write this as 250 characters instead of 500, right? You can, I can say, write as 250 if I want, obviously that's a pretty big characters, right? And it'll come back and characters, and you can change it, right? And it'll say, hey, this is what I'm going to delete. Do you want the new one? Sure. So like if there's any final edits, you can do it. You can download the CSV, you can integrate into your system, you can upload it into a partial flat file, whatever, right? So this is the copy side of it, right? Now, the other side of it is the image side, right? So if I go down here, you can see the image analysis. Now, this is slightly different because we're not giving you the final solution of like, hey, this is the exact image generated that you should drop into your listing. We've done that for a very specific reason, but we're giving you all the insights and the recommendations to go behind it. So think of it as the ultimate like technical and creative brief that you could give to your creative team to execute on. And all the research and everything that needs to be done has been done here for both human conversion and AI readability. We even give you down to the prompts that you can add to Nano Bananas or whatever you're using to generate images if you want to use that for inspiration or if you actually want to use it. So whatever that is, we give it to you, right? So, you know, there's some cool stuff in this report as well. One of the important things here is like this thing here, what customers want, features and benefits. This is exactly what matters to customers. What, you know, comfort and fit, medical and therapeutic suitability, material and construction, size, etc. Right? What we do up front is we give you a snapshot of the landscape of your listing versus your top competitors, but with this concept of like customers buy with their eyes, right? So what is the narrative that you're telling in this image set, right? There's no narrative at the moment, right? So like, you know, I need to look at this through squinted eyes and be like, what is the story telling me? Probably the one that's maybe jumping out best is maybe this guy here, diabetic socks, like non-binding top. Remember that was important.
Yeah.
Best for people with enhanced comfort, moisture wicking cotton blend, comfort that lasts all day, right? So they're telling a story as I scan through the carousel. So we want to make sure that we're telling a story to our users because they're going to buy looking at your images, but also that same story and narrative is what AI is also looking for, right? In how to read it, right? So we give you that, and then we give you a recommendation in terms of your carousel order, main image. We all know about the main image, hero shot, close-up macro shot of the non-binding top band gently resting against a bare ankle and lower calf, right? Lifestyle scene, infographic, feature highlight, social proof, package bundle, right? So that's what it's recommending as a sequence. And then it goes into every single image, right? We'll go to the second image, right? Hero shot, research insight. For shoppers managing diabetes, edema, or lymphedema, the fear of painful elastic marks is the primary purchase barrier. And a close-up macro shot of mark-free skin is the most direct way to neutralize that fear at the emotional level. So include that in your insight. Visual description, extreme close-up macro shot of the non-binding, blah, 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 right? Headline copy, 0 marks, 0 constriction. Supporting copy, non-binding top band stays up all day without squeezing your ankle or calf, right? So that's the messaging that needs to go into it. And then we even give you the technical aspects and the AI prompt. So, you know, a lot of brands will upload their current image stack and then upload these prompts and say, hey, give me a better image with the prompt. And it will come back with an image with your prompts over it. You can either use that or obviously you can you know, put it your creative team, right? So it's a creative will look at this and be like, I know all the strategy behind this. Let me just make sure this is the most awesome image possible, right? And we do that for all your images, and then we do it for your EBC too, right? So down here, where am I? Here, A plus EBC content, right? So brand hero banner, research insight, visual description, all the way through to technical requirements, alt tag that you need to put on the back, image prompt, right? So again, this is going to help you solve it for everything on that front.
Nothing left unturned. That's what I like. And not only you guys doing the architecture, the branding, but now you're also the image guideline essentially. So you're covering, I mean, all aspects of it. I even saw the back end. So it's a lot covered inside this report.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, absolutely. So, you know, what we're seeing, and this is important, is like, okay, well, what's the ROI on that, right? And how do you track that? And what's interesting is, you know, it's not just pure A/B testing, because A/B testing is ultimately testing for conversion, right? But what we want to understand is discoverability. So tracking sessions, are my sessions increasing? Tracking conversion rates. Is there a better conversion rate because we've been recommended in ways that customers are looking for the product, but also that we're connecting with them and they're converting, right? And then your niche rank, which is like versus my competitors, my niche rank improving. So if we can see improvements in that, and importantly, while obviously making sure we track PPC spend and price, because if someone spends more and drops their price, you're going to get better rank and sessions, right? So we have that as a variable because we want to make sure that, like, if that's stable, are we seeing increases in sessions, conversion rank, and niche rank, and overall with the listings we're tracking, we're seeing notable uplift in that from day zero, right? So you know, 68% increase in sessions, 13% increase in niche rank, 18% improvements in conversion rate, right? These are the kind of stats we're seeing, and you know, that ROI comes back because now, you know, people come back to us and they say, hey, well, not much has changed. You know, Cosmo is smart enough to know, like, if I'm tracking for these keywords, you know, it's going to match me to the keywords and stuff. Yes, but you know, you've seen that. Like, if you're not sending all the strong signals across Cosmo and Rufus, so that discoverability conversational layer, you're surfacing in the right way for that. If you're not maximized for that, you're missing out on traffic, right?
Yeah.
And that traffic is converting at a higher percentage, higher values. So, people have to understand that it's not just keyword intent anymore. There's so many, exponential pathways that people can find your product. So you've got to send those signals to it to make sure that you are discoverable. And so that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I hear too is like there's so many generic brands on there, so many people using AI incorrectly. And what I take is not only what the software offers, but the brand storytelling, that unique selling proposition, like what's going to actually help you stand out. And even if it doesn't stick right away, at least you have something you could iterate against based on actual data, as opposed to just, even just semantic text. Because as you mentioned earlier, the game has changed. So I really like what you presented here, Jon.
Yeah, a comment I make on that is like, we have the saying like, ChatGPT is the new keyword stuffing, right? Which is like, anybody who just uses ChatGPT, it's just surface level, right? You're gonna get some, better answers and probably some better things, but you have to have the knowledge of first party data, like what's actually happening in Amazon, and clearly we can get at that through our API connections, right? Reverse engineering and understanding what Cosmo really needs. Reviews, customers, all that kind of stuff, but then also making sure that mapping and the technical stuff is in place, right? So those are things that are not easy to replicate, and certainly ChatGPT is not going to do that. So you need that information. And then to your point, like, as marketers, as e-commerce, sellers, what are the things that are important? And clearly brand strategy and positioning are really important as well, right?
Differentiator. Jon, thanks so much for coming on. Before I let you go, I'll include all links in the show notes, but for anybody listening, where can they find you, and anything else you want to share before I let you go?
Yeah, we'll give you the links, but ZonGuru.com, on the homepage, there's actually a couple of things you can use, our general technology and software for tracking and insights and dashboards, etc. But the Helix is there for you to sign up. It's free. Just sign up and start using it. And do the transformations. There's credits that you can purchase, but we also have a readiness report on there as well, which is totally free, and that will audit and score your current listing. So if you're curious and you just want to check your listing, go ahead and run that, and then see how you score, and then based on that, jump in and get the transformations done.
Heck yeah. Jon, thanks for coming on and sharing the knowledge. This was really insightful, and I love what you guys are working on. So we appreciate you coming on Selling on Giants.
Thanks.
That's a wrap for today's session. The big takeaway here is that listings are moving from keyword optimization to structured product understanding. The brands that adapt to that shift early are going to have a real advantage over the next 12 to 24 months. Appreciate Jon walking us through all of this. If you're listening and this got you thinking about how your listings are structured today, it's worth taking a step back and reassessing what you're actually feeding Amazon. As always, if you found this helpful, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'll see you on our next episode of Selling on Giants.